We're going to do a recap of crypto this year and all the chaos that came with it.
Everything's good going up, but as the ship is sinking, you want to be the first off.
And now we've got, Elizabeth Warren putting together these digital currency bills that are trying to overregulate.
I think that could be the death, potentially, of the industry.
For the bill itself, it feels like a money grab. Like if everything has to be KYC'd, then you can tax everything.
This is not investing advice, but now's a good time if you believe this stuff's going to stick around.
23 and 24 is definitely going to be the year where blockchain, crypto, and traditional finance and industry will commingle and find a healthy way to coexist. I think that's what's going to happen.
I think that there's going to be another maybe down leg, but I think this time next year we start to come out of the hole and the darkness and start heading back up. Hey everybody, welcome to Missing Links with John, Brock, and myself, Stephen King, where we discuss what's missing in Web3 architecture. For feedback, please go to missinglinks.fm, send us an email, give us some feedback on what we discuss and what you'd like us to cover next week. All right, let's get into it. All right, so hey everybody, welcome to the final episode of Missing Links for this year, 2022. We're going to do a recap of crypto this year and all the chaos that came with it. So, hey guys, how are you?
Doing good.
Pretty good.
All right. Well, there's a lot to talk about. So we have Terra. We have basically Terra led to Galaxy Digital, 3AC, Voyager, BlockFi, FTX, and of course, the Merge. Thank you, Brock, for reminding me of that. So let's just start from the top. So Terra, first of all, did you guys have any exposure to Terra? Or did you guys invest in it?
No. I've been asleep on most projects. So for better or worse, I didn't have exposure.
All right. So we all three of us dodged that bullet.
Yeah, same.
Cool.
Yeah.
So Brock, what happened with Terra? You just want to give us sort of a bird's eye view?
Yeah, so it's they call an algorithmic stablecoin. So it's supposed to automatically readjust its collateral to stay 1-to-1 with the US dollar. That since it's algorithmic, there's a delay in processing. So when there's a run on the bank and everybody wants to withdraw, you can basically break the algorithm. That's what happened. The whole thing shut down. Yeah, project went under.
Yeah, and it had a rippling effect. But what is strange to me is that Terra was one of the most obvious things that you could foresee. I mean, it basically, whether you're in crypto or not, but especially if you're in crypto, you can see these things from a mile away. I mean, you can see that this thing, as long as the market's going up, it's going to do great. But as soon as the market turns, and when the crypto market turns, then this thing is going to spiral out of control. And I'm just surprised. I'm not surprised on the retail side, but I'm surprised that some of the larger crypto hedge funds and other participants got caught up in this. I mean, I don't think you don't even have to read anything. You just had to understand sort of peripherally how the network worked. So, John, what are your thoughts on, how this all went down and how just basically the technology was stood up? I mean, was this predictable for you, or was this you weren't paying enough attention to really know?
So I did not have exposure. My focus has been primarily just staying within the, if you want to call it the more infrastructure side naturally, but I would say it was predictable to a point because since it's algorithmic, you can kind of simulate certain things. And the fact you start to see this spiral and this unpeg happen, I think it was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Once people started to see it unpeg and you get the spiral and you start learning about, 3AC and Galaxy Digital and their exposure, it was over at that point because everything's good going up, but as the ship is sinking, you want to be the first off.
Yeah, 100%. So So basically, Terra leads to Galaxy Digital, which has got about a $300 million loss. That leads to Three Arrows Capital, Kyle Davies and Suzu. So they basically go belly up because of all this, and that affects the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. I think the jury is still out on what's going to happen with Grayscale and the digital currency group, Barry Silbert. I think there's still, some rippling effects that could happen in the next year, but then you've got Voyager Digital that's involved, and I think they had about a 500 million or 600 million loss. Blockify goes belly up, and then you have this whole FTX fiasco. All right, so we've got all that, and now we've got Elizabeth Warren putting together these digital currency bills that are trying to overregulate. They're basically stating that anybody that touches crypto, and John, it would be interesting to hear your thoughts around that bill. You don't have to know it specifically, but it basically says no matter what, if you touch digital currency, you need to do KYC, AML, and that's not so bad if you're a centralized exchange. But if you're, in DeFi, or I would imagine some of the things that you work on would be affected by this. I'd be interested in getting both of your thoughts. Just, you don't have to know, again, much about the bill, but just if everybody had to do KYC AML, how would that affect crypto? Would that kill it in your opinion, or would that just be sort of a sidestep?
So how I see it is, I don't know much about the bill. I'm torn. I do think there needs to be some degree of protection, because until people feel more secure again getting back into the space, you will not see investment. You will not see hedge funds. You won't see VCs, putting up capital for projects. And I think that could be the death potentially of the industry. So there needs to be some kind of public trust building through either a little bit of regulation or, good experiences. Now, when it comes to the bill itself, it's very hard to do, especially in DeFi. I think the bigger question becomes, how do you protect people within DeFi so that you could potentially have. So the KYC is a hard one, but the money laundering one, I think, is a lower barrier to entry, because you can look at patterns and see how things move. That can help you determine potentially a bad actor. For the industry as a whole, I think some regulation needs to happen. But if it's full on KYC, like if it's like full stop, it has to be like this, I'm not in favor of it. It has to happen in iterations, especially when you start looking at some of the DeFi purists. It could be a huge turnoff and really kind of, I would say, hinder development and motivation in the space.
Interesting. Yeah. Brock, what are your thoughts? I mean, again, just you don't have to talk about the bill. The bill, all it says is everybody's got to do KYC, AML, and basically give up any user information on demand. So that's nothing new, right? When we were building, certain things that touched money a couple of years ago, the government can do that. That's just, part of their rights. But how do you see? Do you think that crypto can really move forward without regulation, or what can it look like? I mean, because I'm kind of on the fence. We need a little bit of regulation, and we need to make it easier for people to own crypto. They can't manage their keys. But also, John, you mentioned that we got to protect people. I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like people need to protect themselves, but that they, the majority probably don't know how. So, Brock, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, like for the bill itself, it feels like a money grab. Like if everything has to be KYC'd, then you can tax everything. So that's what that feels like. So I don't really agree with it in that sense. I also don't see how it could ever be enforceable. Like Ethereum is a decentralized network. They sanction Tornado Cash, for instance. Even if you're a U.S. citizen, you can still use it without the government knowing. Like there's ways of doing it. They can't actually enforce any of that. So I don't know how they would ever enforce a bill that's like requiring, say, Uniswap to KYC its users. The flip side, I think there is need for regulation, obviously, just in a broad sense. And I think from a customer protection standpoint, you can do it on the on and off ramps into crypto right now. So at the exchange level, it makes a ton of sense. You're protecting customers as they're depositing their funds and as they're withdrawing. It's also a perfect point to tax those same customers. So you kind of kill both those birds with one stone. And while they're in this like decentralized crypto ecosystem, you kind of let them do what they're going to do. And maybe you put regulation around the companies that are US based and offering services. So if it's I don't know, if it's a stable coin based in the US, maybe they have to show proof of reserves and do some like basic auditing. I think the bar is really, really low right now for how we could improve crypto standards.
I agree with that. The one thing I did want to mention, Stephen, to your point, is that you said people should protect themselves. The only way you can protect yourself is knowing how to. And there's, again, this goes back to like the idea of an education campaign. And to Brock's point here with the idea of, I do see how it can be a money grab, but I can see it going one of two ways. You're either going to have people who live by the exchanges or live by DeFi. So, and to your point, how are you going to enforce that? And how I see it is, at least in the near term, is it's not going to really be a shadow economy, but it's going to be more like a parallel economy where people just live within that ecosystem and they don't offboard or off ramp funds.
Especially as you get into the world where people are earning crypto. Like if you're getting paid in crypto for doing a service or like through gaming, whatever it might be, there's like, you're not getting KYC because you're like receiving a crypto payment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you can stay entirely in that ecosystem.
Yeah. Exactly. And if people start taking it, and there are some ways that you can actually send funds to cold wallets to pay for stuff in fiat if you need to. Like I think it was BitPay or something like that had it to where it generates a dummy wallet, you transfer the funds and use that as a credit card for a while, and they can actually KYC it. So there are ways around it.
Yeah, those are great points. My only concern is that so the last 10 years have been really unregulated. Some of the things that have happened have really been uncharacteristic of especially U.S. regulators to let fly. And I'm not saying that crypto, it was doing things all maliciously or anything like that, but it just doesn't make sense that it's been taking so long for any kind of guidance to come out. And now the pendulum is obviously swinging the other way, and so we're going from one side of the spectrum to seems like we're flying pretty fast. I don't know. It feels different. I this time for some reason, and maybe it's just me, but just from it just seems like the VC funding's dried up. The conversations on Twitter have gone negative in terms around crypto. Is the things that I've seen, and maybe it's again my feed, but people that are crypto, you just can't trust anybody, and it's like, what are you talking about? 95% of people are great, enthusiastic, smart, intelligent people that would never rip anybody off. But at least I'm seeing some, a lot of negative things around everything beyond just FTX. So I'm hoping it doesn't swing too far hard into where, the US and others just decide to do CBDCs and I don't know, ban certain cryptos. I'm not really sure. I didn't think that would be an option until recently.
So are you seeing that negative kind of pendulum swing towards crypto itself or blockchain technologies, like the underlying platforms, like the technology or the asset built on top of it? Where are you seeing that swing?
Look, my concern, my concern around the CBDCs and the sentiment kind of go hand in hand because there's some real progress being made on the CBDC front around the world, which is kind of interesting how it all happens at once. But it's not really being talked about, which is interesting too. But these organizations, whatever the central bank is, have been taking this stuff really seriously. And so now that we've got this perfect storm of crypto has been the Wild West, we've got all these crazy actors that are stealing people's money. We've got negative sentiment on Twitter, and I just feel like I'm really being a Debbie Downer on this podcast today, but I'm optimistic. But I feel like I'm also planning because also I invest in this industry, and so I I don't want to see the pendulum go the opposite way. And then the U.S. seems like they're going to do a centralized digital currency, and it seems like it could happen soon. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. But you guys sound like you're seeing something different, which is good.
Yeah, we're Brock and I would say all three of us are kind of battle tested. We've been through all the cycles. Just winter, man. Got my coat on, strapping up, and let's get ready for the spring. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
Start
Yeah,
building.
there was a lot of money though. This was we set a record this year for money being hacked, stolen. But you're right, Brock. You made a good point on the investment front. This is not investing advice, but now's a good time if you believe this stuff's going to stick around. Maybe a few more months to let sort of things with FTX unfold a bit more. But when things get this low, everybody is saying, "Hey, it's all over. Crypto's never gonna, go beyond this point." And then, a year and a half later, everybody's getting rich off of JPEGs.
And yeah, and obviously not a paid sponsor, but the new Ledger wallet that's coming out, that's designed by one of the co-designers of the iPod, will allow you to actually see your NFTs on them in like a ink display. So I think this next cycle is really going to be cool.
Yeah, I saw that. That does look cool. Brock has a cool. It's not a ledger, is it? What wallet do you have?
So I've got, I don't know, I have multiple layers. I have like ledgers for my more day-to-day stuff, but then my vault cold storage is on a grid plus lattice. They're very nice.
Have you heard of that, John?
I have not. I'm actually going to look at it right now.
All right. And Brock, what's your private seed?
Right. No, but they sit on your desktop, so they have to be like plugged in to a power source. So you can't even take them with you really if you wanted to. Like, it's meant to be stationary. It's meant to be cold storage.
It's kind of like Bitcoin as a reserve currency. It's hard to move, but it makes sense, to keep stationary. Anyway, so let's talk about the merge. Let's be positive. That was the best thing that's happened this year. Brachiosaurus, you kick us off, and then we'll go, John, to you. What the heck was the merge? Why is this such a big deal and so awesome?
Yeah. So the merge is huge. This is in the Ethereum space, and why it's now a better reserve currency than Bitcoin. For a long time, this is going to be coined like Ethereum 2.0, just because it was such a major upgrade to the ecosystem. But essentially, we switched on Ethereum from proof of work, where you had to use a bunch of electricity, basically waste a lot of power computing the next block like you do in Bitcoin. Switched from that into proof of stake, where there's now like a 99.99% reduction in power. Still, or it's even more secure now because you're staking with funds instead of miners that keep getting cheaper and cheaper. And yeah, the whole thing worked flawlessly. Like it worked so well. The actual merge itself was a bit anticlimactic. Yeah, very, very exciting.
Yeah, and nothing has happened since the merge. There's been no hiccups.
But so have you guys seen any development activity pick up? Or I mean, I guess it's also correlated a little bit to the market. But I was just reading an article that Polkadot just overtook the amount of developers that Ethereum had, and maybe it wasn't the amount of developers, maybe it was the development activity, and I'm not sure how they measured it. I should have looked into that. Nothing to do with the merge, but kind of interesting if like, I don't know. Have you guys seen any changes on that front post merge?
Me personally, no. I feel like it's been about the same. And to your point with, markets being how they are, I've seen more people building for the next cycle, in my opinion. Traffic's been about the same.
I was going to say I can't speak to that report, but my sense, if I were to guess at it, is that like the Ethereum core like node service and like that core repository is it's not in maintenance mode, but a lot of the updates are happening in separate repositories, like on a beacon chain. Like they have a much more structured approach to the development now. And I could see something like Polkadot, if they're trying to come back to relevance, they might be pushing a lot of code into just like the main source to come up with some revamp.
Yeah,
I don't know about come back to relevance. They've been relevant. I mean, they've had the second biggest community in terms of developers and apps being created, next to Ethereum. So, but they don't have the marketing. Well, either does ETH. ETH was just first, and they didn't really need to market, but they got a lot of exposure because they were the first. Polkadot, they don't market at all, but they got a lot of activity for what's going on, I think, but I'm not a developer, so I don't know. I just look at the apps.
I have yet to meet anybody who's built on Polkadot.
So there's an app on there that I've used, and it's a great app. It's Brock, I've told you about it. I told you to invest in it a while back. While I think about it, I'll tell you what it does. So it basically you can invest in, like, you can basically fund short-term loans to businesses. And so you can choose, like, one is an e-commerce company that is shipping goods and services over from China. They need to pay for inventory. Short-term loans they used to get from like Goldman Sachs, it's 30 days for, $500,000, and they would pay like, I don't know, 15% on that loan. Well, now collectively you can do this, with other people, and actually you can make a decent return. I made 6 or 7%. What is the name of the app? I don't know why I can't think of it. It's not Celsius. It's what is the token too? It's RAD, or anyway, I'll think of it. We'll put it in the show notes if I don't. But Brock, do you know what I'm talking about?
It sounds familiar, but I couldn't place it.
Anyway, that's just one example of, like, they're actually, they've got real world companies that are using this technology, and it's cool. It's good. It's good for the industry as a whole. But let's move beyond that. Merge is great. I can't believe it went as smooth as it did. I mean, that's a rare thing for crypto. But let's look ahead into 2023. So I think it'd be fun just to kind of talk about how you guys foresee the next year in terms of both development, markets, applications being built, sentiment, CBDCs. You mentioned, you talk about whatever you want, and then make some predictions, and then we'll come back to them and see who is right this time next year.
All right. So 2023 in a nutshell, I think it's going to be a building year. Definitely going to be a building year. I think, and this is kind of thinking about the overall economy. If interest rates come down and we start to see more consumer interest in goods and more like leisure spending, I know like Louis Vuitton and some other companies are building NFT projects for some of their consumer goods, as well as, was it the NFL? Or someone else is doing it. Donald Trump is doing it too. Everyone's creating an NFT for something. But now with the merge behind us, it being successful, I think seeing more real world application like ticketing systems and some type of like trading platforms, more DeFi trading platforms becoming more popular, as well as wallets becoming easier to use. I think there is going to be a strong growth cycle at the end of the year. But again, this all comes down to kind of what happens in the overall economy as well as some regulation. But I would say overall, this next year is going to definitely be a building year. Not as much VC money, but definitely a building year. I'd say 2024 we'll start seeing more VC interest.
I like it. Centrifuge. That's the project. Centrifuge. Brachiosaurus, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with John. I think it'll be the year for building, and not just like the individual developer community building now, but I think it's institutional adoption. Like for instance, this past year we've seen a lot of projects come on a Polygon. Like Starbucks is one of them. I'm totally blanking on all the others, but they've had a whole slew of like big name partners that are joining Polygon, and then Visa just announced they're going to be building potentially on top of StartNet. So bunch of projects in like the Ethereum EVM ecosystem, all with institutional adoption. So I think we'll see more of that continue through next year. It just feels like there's a clear understanding that crypto and blockchain's not going away. And so instead, these big enterprises are starting to get on board with it. And to John's point, I think leading into like 2024, you'll start to see applications being built on top. The other trend that's kind of fun to see right now is like Lens protocol launched this year. So that combined with the huge explosion of ENS adoption, I think you'll see more and more people building and using decentralized social apps. I don't think anybody's taking over, say, a Facebook in the near future, but I would imagine we see some innovation in that space.
Well, Facebook's
I was just quickly going to say, this is 23 and 24 is definitely going to be a year where blockchain, crypto, and traditional finance and industry will commingle and find a healthy way to coexist. I think that's what's going to happen. The coexisting paradigm will be figured out.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is contingent upon at least the adoption component of there's an EIP that's pretty interesting that basically uses smart contracts for wallets. So it takes things like MetaMask and no offense, John, but it almost doesn't make them obsolete, but it changes the model where we almost built a product like this back in the day where we had this issue with user keys, and Brock was like, hey, why don't we just basically use a smart contract to lock up or manage these keys? And there's an EIP now around that. And it would make wallet management a lot easier for users where they wouldn't have to custody their keys. And people like my parents could use crypto and not worry about losing all their money. They could lose it in other ways, but I think that something like that is really good for the ecosystem. I think next year is going to be huge, massive for data, both in Web3 and in AI. I think you're going to see a lot of AI and Web3 use cases emerge. I'm really, I know everybody's talking about, Chat GPT and things like that. But it is, I don't really see the applications on blockchain yet, but one that I did see was interesting was using blockchain to distinguish whether something is written by AI or an actual human. And I think that's a really big use case. Because use blockchain as sort of a security backbone or a source of truth. And I think that, I agree with you guys. I think it's going to be a lot of building. I think that there's going to be another maybe down leg due to FTX and everything else that's been going on. But I think this time next year we start to come out of the hole and the darkness and start heading back up. And Brock, to your point in the institutional front, Nike, Adidas, all those guys, they did big drops this year and they were successful and they're tying it to real world products. Centrifuge, we just talked about them. So yeah, I think the next cycle we're going to see crypto become a thing, and it just depends on some of the geopolitical things that happen next year, and hopefully countries don't continue to centralize and go inwards and turn to CBDCs and fight with each other. If hopefully we all start working together again and supply chains get back to normal, and crypto goes back to heads to the top. So I guess we'll see. I guess any final thoughts that you guys have on the development front or markets or what you hope to see into next year?
One of my final thoughts, and it's kind of good and bad to say, but I'm happy to see, I won't say happy, but I'm feeling better about the industry that certain things like FTX and certain other entities have collapsed and been exposed, because it really reiterates the importance of not your wallet, not your crypto, DeFi, and the importance of just the underlying technologies and why they're very powerful and very important. Even though people got hurt, and I hope there's justice, I think it really the undertone did help the industry a little bit, get people to understand why certain things are important in this industry.
Yeah, agreed. Brock, any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
Now is the time to build and learn. Like, things are quiet. There's not very many people in the space. The ones who are left are worth learning from. So if you're interested in getting started or building, now's the time.
Love it. Yeah. All right. Well, that does.
Don't be afraid to start at zero.
Yeah. Or lose money. All right. That does it for us in 2022. We'll see you next year, and we're looking forward to continuing to talk about the missing links in Web3 infrastructure and filling those gaps through products that everybody's building and moving the industry ahead. So what would be helpful if you could leave us feedback on Apple or Spotify, any kind of feedback, good, bad, and different. We would really appreciate that as a Christmas gift or Hanukkah gift. And we'll see you all next year.